Hello, this is Spike, and this is another episode of Spike's Fun Time Garage. I'm changing the brake pads on the front wheels of my 2009 Cadillac CTS-V. Come join me. Okay, first thing you want to do is you want to take off the cap to your master brake fluid there. That way it won't pressurize and hopefully it won't overflow. Torque the wheels as appropriate. I've got it set in reverse, so it shouldn't be going anywhere. Once you get it jacked up and get the wheel off, you want to turn the steering wheel all the way, in this case, all the way to the left so that the brake caliper is more accessible and easier to get to. Okay, there's basically 3 pins holding this thing in place. There's a pin here, and well, this isn't really a pin. It's kind of a sleeved thing, anyway, secured by that bolt there. So get a ratchet with a 13 millimeter socket, and it shouldn't take too much to get that knocked loose. Then just take that bolt on out. Okay, once you get that bolt out, put it someplace where you won't lose it. And the next thing you need is a punch of some sort. Of course, in a fix, you could use a small screwdriver or some other kind of thing that'll substitute as a punch. Maybe a fairly narrow gauge hex wrench or something like that. And I'm just going to push that in there to the bottom, tap on it, and that'll push that whole puppy out to the other side. Although it does tend to hang up there. It's got these 2 sleeves on it, so it makes it a little bit tighter going through. Okay, so that comes out. I'm going to screw that bolt back in it so I won't forget about it. And the next thing we're going to do is punch these pins out. And actually you can just use a started. Just use the punch for the rest, or as much as you can get it. You'll have to hold this spring down just a little bit, take the tension off, and then it ought to slip right out. There we go. Take a look at this thing. Make sure you understand which way it's oriented. And also remember that that bolt there that goes through there, it goes underneath this thing. So if you're going to have to reuse it, but I think most brake pads will come with new ones, so you don't have to reuse them. And we'll get this top pin. One of the things that you want to be aware of, I honestly don't know how the parking brake works in this thing. I don't know if it's one of these electric brakes. If you got a CTS-V, you know the deal. I don't know if it locks all 4 wheels or it just locks the rear. But anyway, I've lifted off for this, just in case. You got to compress the pistons. And there's 6 of them, 3 on each side. So you grab a hold, and if you're worried about scratching this, I'm really not terribly worried about scratching it, but if you are, you could put some cloth there or something. And just squeeze gently, and you'll feel those pistons start to compress. You want to do the same thing over here. And once you get that done a little bit, you can bring this puppy on out. Now, some people recommend that if you have a C-clamp or something, you can take this whole assembly off and you can compress the whole thing. I don't do it that way. I prefer to just use a plastic part. Anyway, side 1 is out. So now we'll get this side, and again, we just want to compress those pistons. And once we've done that, then we can get the other side out. Now is the part where it might make sense to you to have taken this whole assembly off and use some kind of a C-clamp or something with the old brake pads to compress these cylinders. because they do tend to stick out. You push one down, the other one tends to come up. But basically you end up having to flatten all these, and it just takes a while. But if you, kind of like whack-a-mole, every time you push one down, another one comes up. But if you do it enough, pretty much they get all flat. And you can stop worrying about it. Notice the plastic trim tool I've got here. Whatever you use here, whether it's a piece of wood or a plastic trim tool like I've got, you definitely don't want to be doing metal because you don't want to be scarring up your brake disc. Okay, now that I got all the pistons compressed, as you can see if you look in there, I can put in the new brake pads. This is the new Power Stop brake pad. You of course can use whatever brand you want. If you go to GM for the original brake pads, it seems to me the front brake pads alone are getting close to $200 for a set. That's pretty ridiculous. I got these from online for about half that, and I think Power Stop does a pretty good job. Hawk also makes pads depending on your use, but these are just street pads here. So I'm going to use this tiny bit of grease that they gave me, and they really do give you just a tiny bit of brake lubricant. You need to lubricate this whole back of the pad where it's going to meet those pistons. So hopefully they won't seize up. Just a little bit, and you spread it as thin as you can. And get it all over that nice plate. While of course being careful not to get it on the brake pad, because that would be bad. Okay, another part you're going to want to, basically you want to lubricate the friction points. So right here it kind of slides along. You can see these little ledges here. That's where this is going to slide along. And you just really, hopefully all you need is just a very little bit. Okay, so there's a little bit of lubricant there. Anyway, I think that's fairly well lubricated. So now here's the little tang that's going to start screeching when your brakes get low. I like to put that at the top. So I will turn this around and we will just slip it right in. Okay, we're back. You see I got the second brake pad in there, just like the first one I put in there. Anyway, next thing is these two pins. I've got a couple of new ones that came with the brakes. You want to use that tiny bit of grease that they give you to lube up these wider parts of the pins. I've already done that, and if I have complained anything about Power Stop brakes, it's that they should give you more of this this brake lubricant. We're going to want to take this one and put it through the ears of the brake pads and just kind of get it across to where it will go through the hole. And you may have to press on the pads a little bit to get them lined up. And if you're like me, you'll probably overdo it at least once. There we go. And that's all you need. That's going to go into the hole there. Next thing you're going to do is take one of these springs. In this case, this came new with the Power Stop brakes. And remember, this part is at the top of the brake. And I'm going to kind of latch it under there. And I'll take the second pin and we'll put it through the ears down here, underneath the spring, and across the way. And we'll just get that just barely started in the hole. And then we can finish up with a few taps of the hammer. You do want to make sure that you've got it lined up with that hole. Okay. And we're going to want to grease these parts up on the bolt. Let's call it a cross bolt just for the hell of it. And you don't need to see me sit here and fidget and squeeze with this tiny, tiny, tiny bit of brake lubricant they gave me. So I'm going to pause here for a second. Okay, I'm back with you. Then I went and I raided another pack of brakes that I happen to have in the garage. And these hawk pads come with probably, geez, I don't know, 4 or 5 times as much brake lube. Okay, so now I've got this thing greased up. And you'll take this. This is kind of a bolt that's got bolt head that's got 2 flat heads on it. So you can see how it'll fit right in here. And I'll have to use something to pry this up. So again, I'm going to use my handy dandy interior trim tool. Get it on across and lined up with the hole, hopefully. See if I can just tap it a little bit here. No, that's not working. Take my other plastic trim tool. Oh, look at that. Slipped right in. So now I'll go ahead and screw the bolt head back in the other side. Grab my 13mm socket. Okay, and that's plenty of torque on that. And there you go. It's complete. That's all for today for Spike's Fun Time Garage. And we'll see you next time I've got something to do. Bye-bye now.